If you've got a question, the voices of resin are here. Oh, PlastChicks.
PlastChicks is an SPE-sponsored podcast.
Well, hello, Madam President-elect of SPE.
Oh, hey.
It's good. Actually, we're doing this in person. This is so weird.
We're doing this in person.
Why can't I see the wallpaper in your home office?
It's upsetting, but also comforting.
It is, yeah.
We have real microphones. We look like we know what we're doing.
We have
jokes on everyone.
Especially on poor Joe Martin over here, our audio engineer today. Thank you.
We have a real in-person audio engineer. Oh,
yeah. Well, where are we?
We are at the Innovation and Emerging Technologies Conference at PennState Behrend, the one I have been talking about
for years. You've been telling me to come for years.
I know.
Yes.
You're finally here.
I'm finally here.
And we are PlastChicks.
We're PlastChicks. I'm Mercedes Landazuri.
And I'm Lynzie Nebel.
With our powers combined, we are PlastChicks.
The voices of resin.
That's us.
Mm-hmm. So clearly, we're off our game as soon as we get in another environment.
We are so much more awkward in person than we are in a Zoom. We don't know how to be in the real world anymore.
Which, to the average person, is probably going, oh no, that's a high level of awkward. And the answer is yeah. Yeah, it is.
Disaster. Well, joining us in this disaster today.
To make it undisastered. We have one of the early morning speakers. I actually got to sit in on her talk, and it was really fascinating. And we will get into it a little bit, but we have Lisa van der Vorst, the Senior Sales Director at North America at Moldmaster. Those are a lot of words, which only means you are super impressive.
It's even your name is multiple words. Lots of spaces and
a lot of impressive,ness all wrapped up.
I love it. So thanks so much for joining us, Lisa.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. It's one of the highlights. Rather than presenting, you actually get to talk to somebody. So it's a great chance to talk with you both and PlastChicks.
Yay. I know. Well, Lisa, so Lynzie she went to PennState Behrend. She has worked in injection molding for a lot of her career. She knows real well what a hot runner is. Maybe
too well.
Yeah, I have never worked with a hot runner. It feels like a mysterious black box to me. So can you break it down for us? What are they, and what do people typically understand or misunderstand about them?
Yeah, well, hot runners are kind of that unknown, like you said, a black box. You can't see them. So once the mold is closed, you don't know what's inside. But hot runners are simply explained as if you've ever built a model as a kid where you break the plastic parts off of the waste that you throw away, so that little skeleton looking thing, that's the cold runner. And what a hot runner is basically just molds the parts, keeps the runner hot, just the parts to produce less waste, less scrap, that sort of thing.
I get it now. I understand.
See? Done. Episode over.
Well, thanks. I guess we can call it a day, yeah.
We are done. But you have been in the hot runner game for a while.
A long time.
So what's some of the tech that's kind of changed the game within the hot runner world? Where are we now with hot runners versus hot runners a minute ago?
And what's the future? What's to come?
Yeah, well, that's the mystery, right? When I started out, most applications were thermal gate. So, nothing fancy. The plastic just went into the mold, and you got your part. But as time kind of changed, quality of parts increased, things like that. And so valve gates, we talk about. So that gives you the fancy looking, smooth part surface. You don't really see anything, but you'll know anyone who's in plastic always turns the part over. You're in the store, you turn a part over.
Oh, always.
You gotta look.
Can't help yourself.
So then whether it's a thermal gate or a valve gate from a hot runner point of view. But that's how things changed. People wanted more processing capability, more ease of injection, and things like that. So valve gates gave them that. But tech has evolved sort of into control. So controlling everything. And that's where hot runners really are now. So you're injecting the plastic, getting your part out. But controlling that process is really where things are today. So it's a lot more improving the output, things like that. I would also say with customers, they also want ease of use and process. So having the hot runner and the controllers make it easier for people to use, because as people have turnover and the experience retires, that art part of the injection molding has kind of gone away. So it's controlling and making it easy to use too.
Very cool, exciting. So, since we host this podcast, we have the opportunity to low-key stalk our guests on the internet. Low-key, high-key.
Nothing illegal, just, internet stuff.
Just internet, just whatever you on the regular web,
On the regular
not
way.
the dark web.
The safe way.
I promise this question isn't scary, but I did find, Lisa, that we have at least 2 countries in common that we've lived in. Of course, we've both lived in the United States here, but you also lived and worked in Germany as well as a few other countries. Is that right?
I did.
Well, tell us where else you've lived and how has living and working in different countries shaped the way you approach your job?
Well, I worked in Germany, then England, and then the Netherlands for a total of about 8 years.
Wow.
So you must have been in Germany, you said?
Germany, mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was in Heilbronn, Germany.
I'm not sure where that is.
So about 45 minutes south of Heidelberg.
Okay. All right.
So I learned to drive stick on my first day in Germany and got on the Autobahn scared to death.
Oh, that's
That feels
terrifying.
like some bold choices right
So,
there.
you're in the industrial park and a colleague of mine, she says, I'm going to teach you how to drive. And I went, okay. And we did it, and I stalled a few times, and off I went home, and somehow made it back to work the next day. So, but really, I think not just from, let's say, a technical point of view and actual experience, but when you are in a different country, and at this time it was several years ago, to be honest, and you didn't have a lot of internet, and you didn't have a lot of smartphones, and driving directions in your car, that didn't exist. So you learn to kind of just open yourself and listen a lot. And I think by opening up and listening and understanding that some countries have certain hierarchy you have to follow, and certain protocols and things like that kind of changed how I approach. So it's a lot of listening first instead of talking, because people know Americans usually very opinionated.
I don't know what you mean.
Very loud too.
And very loud. But learning to take cues and emotional intelligence really goes a long way. And when you're in a business meeting or when you're with colleagues, just to understand you don't know all the unwritten rules that are there, and you have to learn them pretty quick.
Like learning stick on the Autobahn.
Yeah, great place to learn stick.
Yeah.
So what's something you learned overseas that you think North America could totally benefit from in their approach to molding, teamwork, anything along those lines? What can we pick up from our overseas friends?
Well, I think their language is part of the separation, right? So back then it was more language, and so English, even though it is a common language, it wasn't as common. I think now it's a little bit easier that people can share the same language, and the FaceTimes and the Zooms and the Teams and that sort of thing works really well, and it enables more sharing of technology. So you can share your ideas visually as well as verbally, and I think there's a lot more understanding that goes on now. But I think also with them being in a smaller area, right, you can cross countries in a very short period of time, whereas the U.S. is very big. It could take you hours to get to the next state. You're not leaving the country. So they've learned to collaborate and live together kind of in a more cohesive way, and I think that goes across into businesses as well. So they know who's good at what, and they utilize those benefits to, where the good tool makers are, where the good molders are, and how kind of the personalities of those companies kind of override in the countries.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I would say that almost makes the U.S. like the mysterious black box of the world. We're the hot runners.
So, Lisa, you studied chemical engineering initially, is that right? At Clarkson?
That's correct.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now, you said that your career path wasn't exactly what you're laughing already. It wasn't exactly what you expected when you started your education. So, can you walk us through some of the plot twists? Just any high drama moments?
Well, I don't think anyone ever thinks they're going to go into hot runners. That's like not number one job.
As a little girl, you were not talking about hot runners.
I probably thought I would be, if I was going to manufacture, I would be more likely to manufacture an actual black box.
Yeah.
It's just so far out of my vocabulary that.
Yeah. And so when I got my degree in chemical engineering in school, you're given so many opportunities to explore different aspects of that, right? Chemical engineering is a very wide field. So I went into materials, but we were talking about silicon and things like that and thermoset materials and thermoplastics, right?
No offense.
But all offense meant.
We're very biased.
Yeah, and I guess I thought I would stay on the chemistry side of things. But when you have that knowledge in engineering, you kind of use that, and it kind of doesn't really form exactly what you're going to do, but it gives you kind of that interest in a lot of different aspects, not just chemistry, but also the mechanical side, and basically coming out to make things better, right? That was the engineers want to make things better.
Always.
Right.
Well, take them apart first, and then make them better.
So when I started, after school interviewing, it was, do I go chemistry or do I do something else? And I think I took the lowest paying job, going into hot runners, which is okay. But I knew that if I was examining unknown chemicals, I didn't know what it was going to actually do. Do you work at a nuclear reactor and take those risks? Do you work with unknown chemicals and take those risks? And then how do you actually use what you know to have a career? And I went with a company that was a little bit smaller and offered more opportunity. And it was in my sort of realm of being in plastics and helping people find solutions. And finding solutions is kind of in a way what I thought I wanted to do, but not really in the hot runner industry.
Right.
I thought it would be more on the chemical side and things like that for materials.
And so that was Synventive?
It was originally Kona back in the 90s, so it was Kona Corporation.
Gotcha, but not the same Kona that does the elevators.
No.
Or the shaved ice.
No.
Or the shaved ice, or I think bicycle pedals.
Okay.
A certain bicycle clip.
So many options.
It's like NTech for plastic.
and not the coffee either.
Not the coffee. So you started there right after college. Did you go to Europe right after college? Or?
Within, I think it was 2.5 years.
Wow.
And I
That'd be
went to
so
Europe.
fun.
So fun.
Yeah, it was fun, it's scary, but a great experience that I had. Yeah, I wouldn't exchange it for anything, to be honest.
I would exchange things for that experience.
Yeah.
And, kind of along the lines of what you were saying is, when you're in your engineering classes, you don't maybe necessarily know what is going to be opened up to you. What advice do you have for someone that's deep in that, physics and, material science classes and all the algebra and calculus and all the chaos that comes with an engineering degree? And, they're maybe just kind of unsure of where they're going to land or what exactly they're going to do, or, they don't have it visualized or the next step planned, that can be overwhelming. What's your advice for, those people?
The people who might sit in this very room,
literally
soon,
this very
classroom, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think engineering gives you the foundation for so many things. And really, how do you put into perspective when you're just a student knowing what there is out there? Because I went into hot runners and I thought, oh, that's really small, but it is. But at the same time, it pulls in so much other information and backgrounds that you can draw from. And in the plastics industry, when you look at it, you could be developing parts, you could do part design, you could do mold design, you go into the chemistry of the polymers, right, and creating resins and figuring that out. So I think a lot of it is what you enjoy. And then maybe also where you want to live, right? Because it depends where you want to go.
Do you want to go to Europe?
Get into plastics now.
But I think everyone finds, I had colleagues that were more into the developing side of things, right? Where they actually wanted to create something. I don't know if that was really me, right? I wanted to find a solution. I wanted to take what was created and make it work for somebody. So I was a little bit on the different side of things, where there are people that are better at creating it. So I think there's something for everybody, no matter what you do.
That's right. That's you've just described us. I'm the creative, and Lindsay's
I'll send you some bullet points.
This is how we fix this.
Yeah.
So you walked into the room. You just wrapped the Net Impact Circular Plastics Challenge, and you were mentoring a finalist team. Is that right?
I was, yes.
So can you tell us what that experience was like? Well, what is the Net Impact Circular Plastics Challenge, first off?
Okay, the Circular Plastics Challenge is a challenge that's been going on since 2022, and it is a collaboration between Coca-Cola, Hillenbrand, and Net Impact, and it is looking at sustainability in plastics, and the circularity of that, so making it come full circle so that we don't have additional waste in the environment. And this year's challenge was based on digital and AI powered innovation for circularity. So my team was one of 5 finalists, which I was very excited to work with them. They were out of Kenya, and they came up with an AI platform dashboard to help companies who created plastics basically figure out how much of their plastics is being recycled so they can track. They can get sort of like how do I explain it, a reputation score, like how well are they adhering? Because there's a lot of legislation nowadays on what you need to do for recycling plastics. So
you got to be in the limits there.
Right. So it gives them a benchmark against other similar companies, so that the dashboard, so they have, they get bragging rights, they can track, and their reputation, things like that can actually benefit them going through. So there were a couple finalists that had something similar. So it's interesting to see how from California to Africa, there are similar thoughts and concerns over the environment and global awareness of pollution and waste. So that was really exciting, and really the innovations that everyone came up with were really exciting, and trying to solve the problem, not just the symptoms, but going back to kind of the root of it. And I think if more people understand the global impact and how it is, because plastics aren't going to go anywhere, right? They're here to stay, regardless of the waste. And the waste did create a problem. My team got their inspiration because they're in Kenya, in Nairobi, and a couple of years ago they had a flood. And the flood was not created not only from the rain, but it was created from plastic blocking the drains.
Oh.
And it flooded her business. It flooded the local areas. People are having to evacuate, just with their clothing on their back, their babies, and escaping their homes that were flooding. So that was their inspiration to change something, that plastic needed to have something to do. Now, I said your water bottles aren't going to go away, right? So they want to go back to the beginning and encourage recycling and encourage, better waste management and things like that. So
very cool.
Very exciting.
Oh, I love that. What are some of the trends or materials in circular plastic space that you're kind of excited to see coming into the real world use? And I mean, I'm kind of hinting around at some of the stuff you were talking about this morning, because it kind of answers a little bit of this.
Yeah. I guess in a trend sort of way, it would be nice to see, and we talk circularity again, right? Nice to see that the let's say waste produced in a factory actually just gets reused by that same factory. You don't have any shipping costs. Everything just kind of gets reused. And we talked about co-injection and putting the waste inside the skin material. But I think when you talk about like new things, I think some of the more exciting stuff is to use other waste streams. And I know that sounds really weird, but I've seen agricultural waste being incorporated into resin. So we're talking like corn husks, right? We produce a lot of corn in the U.S., right? So corn husks kind of get ground up and reused. And we're seeing a lot of that get better and better for, compostable resins, even in your backyard. There's utensils now that you can actually just put in your backyard waste and they go away after about 6 weeks. So that stuff's pretty awesome. And that's exciting to see. The regular PCR right now, it doesn't look so nice. It doesn't smell so nice. Yeah. So it's a little bit harder to use. And I think everybody wants a better way to have some post-consumer material that can get reused and not go into the landfill and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. So it's such a delight to mentor these teams. I've gotten to mentor a couple of teams for design challenges or industrial designers. And I always find I learned so much from them. It could be actual like historical facts, like, oh, this product hasn't actually been redesigned since,
Gen Z words.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the slang, all the slang that the kids are using. No, but talking seriously now, what have you had the same experience? What what did you learn from your team or any of the other finalists? Were there anything that stood out to you?
I think all of the teams realized there's a disconnect. We all see plastic waste in the environment, at the beach, in the forest, wherever, in the rivers, but no one really connects that back to the whole cycle, right? From the manufacturer the whole way through. And manufacturer, the consumer, the recycling streams, and you have so many different places in the world. A suburban area or urban area is nothing like what it is in the rural or in wetlands or anything like that. So I think everyone realized there has to be a connection that everyone needs to be talking about it, not just, the waste management side, the recyclers, or, I think that the deposits actually get a lot of the recycling back in the U.S., but that may not work in Africa or somewhere else, right, where they don't have that access to places to get that.
Yeah, that's been one of the big issues with the Global Plastics Treaty. It's like so many different nations and so many different ways of operation. And
it's consumer awareness, and then consumer, what do you want to call it? I don't want to even say engagement, but that they actually follow through, to recycle it. Even my parents live in Pennsylvania, in a more rural area, but it's no longer, recycling's not collected unless you pay for it. Mm-hmm. Right? And some people can afford it, some people can't. And how do you get then people to do it? Do you just go like Europe where you have the big bins at the city center? But then they have to drive there. What if they don't have a car? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of challenges locally and globally that we face. And that disconnect between what manufacturers think they're actually achieving versus what is being achieved outside. So it's that disconnect that I think they're trying to pull together, and everyone's presentations today really focused on that, is pulling all aspects of it together.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like there's no one way to do almost anything in this entire country where people are like, yes, we agree. And so, to handle something that's so big and so impactful, but try and find one solution, that's hard.
Well, but it looks like they were all talking about the one big problem that I think maybe isn't talked about as much, right? That's the thing that stood out today. That's insightful.
So, we're almost out of time, but we wanted to make sure we talked about, taking a chance on the experience. What's one risk or opportunity in your career that really, it paid off big?
Well, I think there are a couple. One was going to Europe, of course. That was a big leap, not only for me growing, but also for my job, right? Understanding international customers. And then when I came back to the United States, having the opportunity of working on various projects across, injection molding machines, hot runners, controllers, that type of thing. But it set me up for becoming the first global strategic account manager that we had. And that was basically 12 years after I came back from Europe. So it was like, did it pay off or not? The Europe trip kind of was the impetus, but it really has applied to almost everything since then. And what I have known, back then there was no internet. You didn't have cell phones. I know I'm my age, but you didn't have that ease of things. You didn't have the GPS, and I went the wrong way a lot of times.
Wow. Oh, gosh. I'm driving on the other side of the street in England.
Yeah. Well, I went the wrong way there, too. But I think that, stepping outside of your comfort level. When I went to Germany, I didn't speak German. I took Latin in high school. So I had no idea what I was going to encounter. Nowadays, I think it's a lot easier. There's less of a barrier with languages, but kind of stepping outside your comfort zone, you just never know where those experiences, will take you in the end, and they can offer some really great things. If people put the faith in you, why not go ahead and do it? Someone sees it. So even if you're scared, because you haven't done things yet, and you just got to keep going and going. And I like that part. I kind of like the unknown. I like kind of trying it out. And you meet a lot of people on the way.
Drew you to the mysterious black box.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Lisa van der Vorst, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It's been a real pleasure.
You're very welcome. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to PlastChicks. New episodes appear on the first Friday of every month. So either follow or subscribe to get those new episodes ASAP. PlastChicks, The Voices of Resin, is a plastics podcast sponsored by SPE, Inspiring Plastics Professionals. If you want to find out more about SPE, please visit like the number, SPE.org.
If you've got a question, the voices of resin are here. Ooh, PlastChicks.
PlastChicks is an SPE sponsored podcast.